Hello students, so we are moving on in terms of our enhancement project to the next sections. So if you haven't already previously watched the introduction video and the video on either real estate investments or cash investments, please watch those two videos first. They are located on Google Classroom under Ms. Van Exel's videos. And you should have also been emailed those videos as well, so you can check your email account. But the purpose of this video is to talk about the mathematical representation section for the cash investment opportunity. But it is actually for both the cash or the real estate. I just only put cash investment here in the title, but it's for both cash and the real estate opportunities. But we're going to begin with the cash investments, and this video may be two parts because in the mathematical representation section, you're going to be either using Desmos or Google Sheets to graph your cash investment opportunities. And insert that material into your document. And then you're going to screenshot the mortgage calculator if you're doing real estate and put that in your paper with some mathematical representations for that as well. And then lastly, you're going to use the cash investment formula to show how interest is calculated and show each step of the calculation. So to start with, I'm going to show the example using Google Sheets because even though Desmos.com was suggested by the network, I believe, I don't think it's the easiest to use. I think Google Sheets is a lot easier to use. So I'm going to open that up. So I'm just going to go to Google, go over to these 9 little circles over here and click on Sheets. And it opens up this little spreadsheet that you're about to see in a moment. You're going to choose, for under Start New Spreadsheet, you're going to choose this blank document. So right now it has Untitled Spreadsheet. So you're going to give it some title. I don't know, let's just call it cash, for example. So if you are not doing cash investments, just hang on with me and we're going to talk about real estate investments. But I'm just going to start with cash investments. Or feel free to fast forward to where I start talking about real estate investments. So with cash investments, we have a specific equation that we're going to be using here to calculate everything. So back in the enhancement projects, let me scroll up. So here in the cash investment section, I gave you the scenario of $20,000 over a 50-year period. And then I gave you a formula that you're going to be using to calculate it. So we're going to be going through those calculations for each of the different investment options here for cash investments. So we're going to do savings accounts first. So in my spreadsheet, I'm going to start with just clicking on one of the cells here. And in the cell, I'm just going to write out what I want to start with. So there are a couple things that I want to include here. So for my savings account, I have an interest rate. And in the cell below interest, I'm going to put in the exact amount as a decimal. So this is 0.01. So this is 1%, but I'm just writing it as a decimal. So I'm going to label this is for savings. And then I'm going to continue to fill these in when I do the other 3 cash investment options. But for right now, I'm just going to start with a savings account. All right, so the next part is we need to insert the equation here into the spreadsheet because this is what we're going to be using. And for this equation, the FV is the final value. So that's the value that we're trying to get after a certain amount of time. So for example, if you invested $20,000 for 10 years, the FV represents how much money will be in that savings account at that point. The initial value of principal is how much money you're putting into the account initially. So if you're going to invest all $20,000 or just $5,000 or whatever it is. The R is the interest rate. So that's the APR or the percentage that you're earning after so much time has passed. And then T is the time in years. So I'm going to insert this equation into this first box here. So I'm just going to type in the same equation that you just saw. And I'm going to check back to make sure, just to make sure that I wrote it correctly. Okay. So I'm going to skip down to this seventh row here because I'm going to leave some space so that I can put the other interest rates. But down here, I'm going to put the principal. So FV stands for how much money I'm going to start with. So you get to choose how much money you're going to put into the account initially, and you get to choose how much, you get to choose whether you're going to put all of the $20,000 or some of the $20,000. So I'm just going to use $20,000. So I'm going to type that into that cell. I'm sorry, I have the wrong. This is supposed to be IV. So IV is the initial amount of money, $20,000. Let's just say I want to put $20,000 into the account. The next part is E. E is a constant, so we already know what that value is represented by. So E is 2.71. R is going to be the interest rate here. So I'm going to go here and just add a little note. So this interest is the R. So when I'm inserting the R into the formula here, I know where it's coming from. And then lastly, I want to put time, but I want you to use multiple years. So I'm going to put time in a full column because there's multiple times, like I said before, that I want you to use. My time is going to be here. Then the times that I want you to use, I want you to do 5-year increments or 10-year increments for this 50-year period. Again, that 50-year period comes from the Enhancement Project's instructions. So I'm just going to, in this column, input the different increments of time. So just to clarify, this represents 5. This is 5 years. So this is how much is going to be in the account after this. I use when I want to know how much is going to be in the account after 5 years, after 10 years, after 15 years, and so on. Okay, so what we're going to include now is when we want to make a calculation here, we use the equal sign. So you're going to press the equal sign on your keyboard. And what the equal sign does in Google Sheets is allows us to make calculations automatically after we input certain values. So I'm just going to use the equation here above to represent this. So my equal sign is there. Next, I'm going to input the IV, so the actual value of it. So in that case, is this $20,000 here? So I'm not going to type $20,000. What I'm going to do is click on the cell with the $20,000. And you see how it puts B7 into the cell? That just tells us the column and the row is B7 where we find the $20,000. All right, next I'm going to insert the parentheses and then the E. Again, I don't type in the E or type in 2.71. I click on the cell with the 2.71 in it. Then I'm going to put I'm going to make an exponent by putting this little upside down V symbol. So I'm going to click Shift and then 6 on my keyboard. And then lastly, I'm going to put in the rate and the time. So the rate, the R represents the rate, the interest rate to be more specific. So that's over here, 0.01. Again, I'm not going to type in 0.01. I'm just going to click in the cell where I put the 0.01. Then the rate gets multiplied by time, so I need to put in a multiplication symbol. So that's Shift 8. And then I'm going to choose the time. So my first time that I want to look at is after 5 years. So I'm going to click on the cell with 5 years. Close my parentheses. Next. And actually, one last thing that I left out. I want to put a multiplication sign between the IV and the parentheses. So that's the B7 and the parentheses here. So Shift 8 to put another multiplication sign. Then press enter. So what it's giving us here is the amount of money that's going to be in the account after 5 years at 1% interest rate if we initially put in $20,000. Okay, so we can do the same thing. So if we want to do this, repeat this for 10 years, we can go back and type all the stuff that we just put in, or we can click back on the initial value that we have, and we want to choose the things that we don't want to change and the things that we do want to change. So if I were to click on the cell with the the first calculation we did, I'm going to double click it. And if you notice here on the sides, you have these weird dotted rectangles here. What those show is the things that are getting used in the equation. So we're using the 1% or the 0.01, we're using the 20,000, we're using 2.71, and we're using a time of 5. So what I want to do is to use that same calculation for the rest of the years here. So what we can do is click back on our original calculation. And if you notice, there's this blue square in the corner here. And when I hover over it, it creates like a plus sign looking thing. So I can click on it and bring it down. Hold on just a second. Let me go back. I'm going to click it and then click and bring down. But you see how it has all these errors in the calculations? So it means that we need to look at what we had in the equation and make sure that we have everything written correctly. So let me go back for a second. So in the equation, the project, the R and the T are the exponents here. So I want to make sure I put them together. The R and the T are together. So here I want to use a parentheses around the A3 and the D3 so that it's establishing that all of that is a part of the exponent, and then click enter. So it changed the value to the correct number. So that was